Some of y'all are lying in church. Well, welcome this morning. For those of you who are first-time guests, my name is Scott. I'm part of the team here at TWCC. We're entering into our Christmas season, and this, for me, I'm going to be honest with you, is a little bit stressful for me. This is my first Christmas here at TWCC, and I'm scared to death I'm going to mess something up. I know doing Advent candles and some of y'all, I'm not really a traditionalist. I believe personally that I love to mix things up because I think that comfort oftentimes leads to apathy. And I think one of the biggest problems with the church in America is we become very apathetic. We come in, we do our thing, we sing our songs, we check our box, and we go home. And so one of the things I want to warn you on the front end is I'm going to mix up Christmas a little bit, but I promise you I'm not going to throw baby Jesus out of the manger, all right? But we are going to look at the Christmas story in a little bit of a different light. And I know that scares a lot of you. I'm not expressing myself well, so let me try this. So if we're going to talk about the Christmas story over the next 3 or 4 weeks, let's talk about the characters. Obviously, would everybody agree with me that Jesus is the most important character of the story? Okay. Yes, okay. In our church, you can talk back, all right? It's interactive. Does everybody agree Jesus is the most important? There we go. Okay, so by a show of hands, I want to take a vote on who the next most important characters of the story is. How about the shepherds? Anybody big shepherd fans? Like anybody a sheep farmer in here? No? Like shepherds. I mean, I got a sheep. Awesome. The shepherds, they were kind of the lowliest of the low, right? When you look at the Christmas story, the fact that it was announced to probably the lowest class of citizen that was out there. I mean, the shepherds were dirty and nasty, and they lived in the field constantly with their sheep, and they were just really bad people. No, I'm just kidding. That was awful. All right, how about the wise men? Anybody big wise men fan? Wise men? We got a few people. They like the wise men. How many wise men were there? Wrong, actually. I want y'all to do some research on the wise men. It's been pretty fun for me. I dug into it this year. The wise men, like we portray them as 3 wise men at the manger, but the reality of it is they showed up a couple of years later, and there may have been 10 or 12 of them. But we don't have too many wise men. How about Mary? Everybody likes Mary, right? She's always super clean, look like she just got out of the shower. She's got her little blue turban on, angelic looking, always has her arms out, right? So Mary, we got a bunch of Mary fans. She's the second most important, right? How about Joseph? Joseph gets the raw end of the deal, right? Because let me ask you guys something. How many of y'all would handle the conversation well? That you, honey, I'm pregnant. It's not yours, it's God's. Right? When you look at the Christmas story, like we have these nativity scenes, and it's all clean, and it's all pure, and it's all wonderful and angelic looking, but the reality of it is, when you look at the actual Christmas story, the lowest of the low was who God announced it to. We got 3 wise men or more, right? Coming in a couple of years after it, we've got Mary, who's a virgin, having to go in and tell her Joseph, and Joseph's getting ready to actually divorce her. He said, I'm going to end it quietly. See, back in those days, he could have actually had her taken out and stoned and killed. We see later on about the adulteress that was caught, right? It was a messy situation. It was a messy scene. How about Herod? I mean, Herod's in the story, right? We don't really talk about, he wanted to kill Jesus, so we don't really talk about him. How about the innkeeper? Innkeeper was also in the story. He had no room. Am I missing anybody? Is that everybody? I don't want to mess anybody's traditions up. Do I have everybody, Tim? Do I have everybody? I think so. All right. How about you? How about you? You see, actually, the second most important character of the Christmas story is neither Mary or Joseph or wise men or shepherds or kings or camels or sheep. The second most important person in the Christmas story is actually you. It's all of us. You see, the Christmas story, you can find it at the beginning of Matthew, you can find it in Luke, you can find it several places in the Bible, but the Christmas story is actually one verse. And it's found in John chapter 3, verse 16, and it goes like this. Say it. Wow. See, the Christmas story is John 3:16. For whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. See, the whosoever is you. The whosoever is me. The whosoever is us. The whosoever is the people at your work. It's the boss. It's your kids. It's your friends. It's your coworkers. It's your coaches. It's your fellow students. The whosoever is all of us. And if we take out us out of the story, see, the whole reason for the Christmas story, see, over time, we've watered it down. We've watered down the Christmas story to the point where it's become a bunch of traditions, and it's become a bunch of gifts, and it's become a bunch of stuff and activity and busyness, and we often miss the reason for the story. You see, we're caught up in the story, but we miss the reason of the story, and the reason of the story is you. Because God loved the world so much that he gave his only son. And he sent him from heaven to earth in a messy situation, in a messy barn. And he had messy people surrounding him. That whoever believes in him, regardless of how messy you are, will have eternal life. Think about that for a second. The greatest gift we could ever have was given to us. And we get so wrapped up in stuff, and we get so wrapped up in schedules, and we get so wrapped up in the tradition of Christmas that we often miss the actual gift that was given to us by God. Here's what I know. Over the next few weeks, how many of you are really big Christmas fans? I mean, you would say this. You would say, I had my lights out in June. I've been looking forward to it. I've been singing Christmas carols since October. And y'all are big time into Christmas. See, this is what I know. For even those of you who are super into Christmas, there's going to come a day here in about 3 weeks that you're going to go, oh, man, I'm glad that's over. For some of you, Christmas isn't the most wonderful time of the year. Christmas is actually a time of massive stress. Christmas is a time of pain. Christmas is a time of grief. For a lot of us, checklists have to be made. Parties we're going to attend. Schedules get so crammed full. You're going to travel. You're going to hang out with some very difficult people. You're going to spend money you don't have on people you don't even really like. It's Christmas, right? You can laugh about it. It's true. But we get so stressed out. And for those of you who even love Christmas, it's actually by the end of it a time of massive stress and anxiety. And even for those who love the holiday. But for those who Christmas brings back those negative feelings, it can become one of the most dangerous times of the year. For most, just surviving the holidays is a huge step. According to WebMD, where if you're a hypochondriac and need to feed your I'm going to die mental hunger, you can go to it. And you know I'm right. I went to WebMD once about a stomach cramp, and I left thinking I had the Zika virus. But WebMD said that heart-related deaths spiked. Did you know the number one day of the year for heart attacks is December the 25th? Think about that for a second. The most wonderful time of the year, the day that we should be celebrating Jesus, is actually the day that we have the most heart attacks. According to Forbes, there's a psychologist named Anita Sands. She explains it like this. She said, during the holidays, there is an increase in the number of activities, tasks, and social events that people must manage. Shopping and gift buying can cause financial and emotional stress and can create a need to manage crowd, traffic, malls, or large stores. Family, school, neighborhood, and work celebrations and parties create social time and energy demands that we normally don't have. Traveling to be with family or friends for the holidays can cause a variety of additional stress. Being unable to be with family or friends for whatever reason can also create high depression. If you're experiencing significant loss or you're actively grieving, the holidays can become more stressful because you remember who's not there. School, work, and sleep schedules are often disrupted during the holidays. And healthy ways of managing stress, like ensuring good nutrition and daily exercise, are often interrupted. The holidays are synonymous with families, so any issues that a person has with their family will come to the forefront during the holidays. If there is a loss, dysfunction, addiction, abuse, disconnection, separation, estrangement, or divorce occurring or affecting your family, then there is a likelihood that you will have to manage the emotions that are related to these issues. For someone already managing depression and anxiety, it is an additional emotional burden. Joy to the world. The stress goes up. Why is that? It's supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year where we're supposed to worship Jesus, but we've turned it into this time of season that is so overwhelming that it creates depression, and it creates anxiety, and it creates high stress. And as a counselor, I see all too often that this time of year, from about Thanksgiving to about New Year's, counseling goes up. Depression spikes big time. I hear things like, you know what, I just can't get everybody everything they want, or you know what, my job's tight, or money's tight, or the economy's tight. And a sense of depression comes over us because we feel this need to buy things that we at any other time of the year don't seem to need. I also see a lot of grief around the holidays. If you've lost somebody, if you've lost a spouse or a child or a parent, that you sit and all of the memories of Christmases gone by, the grief comes slamming back home. And we see it in our own backyard. Even this time of the year, we see shootings in malls down the street from us over shoes. I'm like, Amazon has every pair of shoes you could want. But we're shooting people over it. This past week broke my heart. As a parent, it's your worst nightmare. We had a young man within our community that thought it was so bad that he decided to end his life. And it directly, this isn't stuff that happens in California or in New York. This is stuff that happens in our own backyard. Some of you walked in here this morning and you hear these Christmas songs and you see us laughing, and inside of you, you have a broken heart. Or you have an emotion that says this is not the time of the year. So over the next few weeks, we're going to take a look at the whosoevers. We're going to take a look at you, and we're going to talk about different ways that we can survive the holidays. We're going to give you some tools. It's going to be somewhat practical. Today, the title of my message is Make Room. It's make room. We live in a culture that has just overwhelmed the reason for the season. If you got your Bibles, we're going to be in Luke chapter 10 this morning, verses 38 through 42. If you're watching online, there's YouVersion. There's all kind of different things you can tune in, but that's where we're going to be at. I use the NLT just because it sounds more like me and it's easier for me to understand. So we're going to jump in. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all of these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken from her." You see, I've heard this story preached in 100 different ways, and we always give Martha a bad rap. We always preach on how Martha was distracted and how Martha was this bad person. The truth of it is, Martha was doing good stuff. Martha was doing some things that needed to be done. But because she got so busy, because she got so anxious, because she got so overwhelmed doing the good things, she actually missed out on the best thing. And it was sitting right in front of her. One of the tools that we're going to look at this week is you need to make room in your schedule. Make room in your schedule. Over the next 3 or 4 weeks, your schedule is going to fill up fast. My wife looked at me yesterday and she said, "Have you seen our calendar over the next 3 weeks?" And when I looked at it, the reality of it is I didn't have a single day on there available. And it wasn't all Christmas stuff. It was work stuff. It was family stuff. We got people coming into town. We've got basketball tournaments. I know travel ball started. We got rodeo season going. I mean, there's all kind of stuff where if we're not careful, we'll get so busy doing the stuff that needs to be done that we'll actually miss out on the reason that we have this entire holiday season. And that's Jesus Christ. Ephesians 5:15 through 17 says it like this. It says, so be very careful how you live. Do not live like those who are not wise, but live wisely. Use every chance you have for doing good because these are evil times. So do not be foolish, but learn what the Lord wants you to do. Let me ask you a question this morning. How many of you would love to have more time to spend with God? Raise your hand, right? You got to raise your hand because you're in church, right? That's the truth. Yeah, if you don't raise them, God's going to turn you into a greasy spot on your chair. Most of us would say, you know, I really do wish I had more time with God. I really do wish I had more time to feed my soul. I really do wish I had time to invest in more important places. But here's the reality of it. And tell me if I'm wrong here. If God gave you an extra hour in your day and you woke up tomorrow and God said, I gave you 25 hours, what are you going to do with that next hour? How many of you are going to spend that entire hour talking to God? None of us. We're going to spend that entire hour catching up and filling it with more stuff that we didn't have time to do. And it's true. And in the Christmas season, it becomes even more overwhelming. On Sundays, and this is how I know this, on Sundays, we get annoyed when God gets more than an hour. Right? Most of us have been conditioned to walk in, and I grew up in a church where the pastor would take off his watch and he'd set it on his pulpit because we give God an hour, right? It's God's time. And we get upset when we get to the restaurant and we get behind the Methodists because they take forever, right? Because God gets an hour. And during the Christmas time, we give God our time in a building, but how much time do we give Jesus outside of this building? How much time in our schedule do we dedicate to Jesus? How much time do we dedicate to telling others about Jesus? Christmas, you see, we want more God time, and God custom made this holiday. He said, hey, I'm going to create this whole 3 weeks where it's nothing but me. But yet we still get so overwhelmed with stuff that we often leave the most important gift, the most important character of the story out of it. And we get busy with shopping and we get busy with travel, and we're like Martha, it's stuff that needs to be done, and we've got family coming in, and we got to get stuff ready, and we got to buy presents, and we've got to go to these parties, and we got to. But yet we don't got to worship the one who came to save us. You see, margin, I use this word a lot in counseling. Margin would be having more than enough time. Margin is not living on the edge. Margin is not saying, well, I've got margin. I've got 23 hours and 58 minutes of my day scheduled, but I've got 2 available. You see, that's not margin. Margin would be having more than enough time. It would be having time to help somebody who's in need, without wigging out, going, oh my gosh, I can't believe they would ask me to do that. I don't have time to go to the soup kitchen and help. I don't have time to go shopping for the senior adults that they want me to get on this tree. I don't have time. I mean, I would love to, but if I had more time, I would actually be more festival-ish. It's not a word, is it? If I had more time, I would do more. And it's just not true. What we need to do is create margin in our schedule so we have the opportunity to feed our souls, so we have the opportunity to show Christ through serving, show Christ through giving to others, show Christ through telling others about Jesus. Margin would be having time to rest. How many of y'all would say, I am a well-rested individual? 1. Dude, I want your schedule. How many of you would say, I'm absolutely relaxed, nothing gets to me? Like I can go tomorrow and I can be on my way to work and the old lady can cut me off and it's not going to bother me at all because I don't have to be there on time. I have no stress in my life. How many of you would say that Christmas is a time that you actually release all of your stress? None of us. But yet it's a time of season that we ought to have margin because the one who came, who was born for us, for the whosoevers, the reason for the season is the last thing that we focus on. Because what? We don't have time. Here's a second tool for you. Make room in your finances. I'm just going to tell y'all something. Most of us invite anxiety into our home during this time of the year. I read a stat the other day that said almost 50% of Americans are still paying for last Christmas. And they're going to go shop this Christmas. Again, we buy things we don't need for people we don't really like often. Or we buy things that we don't really need to impress people we don't really know. Because you need your kids to have that because somebody else's kids have it that you don't even know but you heard about. Right? And we take, it's the American way. I don't have the money to spend on it, so what I'll do is I'll use this credit card and I can pay it off next year. I'll pay it off when I get my taxes, right? And then the taxes come and you needed to buy something else, and so well, I'll pay it off by the end of the year. And before long, we're at the next Christmas season and we're stressed out because we don't have money to buy our kids the stuff that we want them to have, but yet we're still paying off what we bought them last year that we didn't. Do you see the cycle? Proverbs 21:20 says it like this. In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil. There's more than enough. Say it with me. More than enough. More, margin, more than enough. Not living on the edge. But a foolish man devours all that he has. We invite anxiety into our home, where we spend all year long paying off the things that we just thought we had to have. Those great deals where you walk in and you say, but honey, I saved $350, but you spent $700. But we live in a marketing world to where we'll walk into these places and they've got all these great sales. And I'm not knocking shopping. I'm not. You need to shop. You should buy gifts. You should do whatever you feel is between you and your family. But when we take it to the point where it brings in anxiety, when we take it to the point where it brings in depression, and we take it to the point where we don't see a way out, we've taken it too far. In the house of the wise, there is margin. It doesn't say in the house of two income families, there's margin. It doesn't say in the house of six-figure income earners, there's margin. It says in the house of the wise, whether you make $10,000 a year or whether you make $1 million a year, living within margin, living within a budget, living within boundaries will give you a tool to make it through the holidays where it's not so anxious. This morning I want to define happiness because the world defines happiness as more than I have now. Well, I'll be happy if I get that, fill in the blank. I'll be happy if I have those shoes with that on it. I'll be happy when I have that new phone, that new truck, that new gun, that new purse. Whatever y'all get happy about. But the truth of it is, we define happiness as when I have more. The truth of it is happiness should be the one who came, who died, so that we don't spend eternity far from him. If I had just a little bit more, I would be happy. And culture says you deserve it. Culture says you deserve it. You need it. Get it now. Don't wait. There won't be another deal like this one. And we bite. And we put ourselves in a situation where we invite anxiety. You've got all of these people walking out of I love counseling. Because on the outside, people look like they have it all together, and they walk out of these beautiful homes, and they get into their brand new King Ranch trucks, and they go shopping, and they've got all of these bags in their car that they put on the credit card, and they're going to this really nice restaurant, and you know what they're doing? They're fighting about finances. During the Christmas season, I get more counseling. I've always said counseling boils down to 5 things: communication, sex, money, parenting, and boundaries. And money around this time of year is one of the most stressful things you can have. We overspend and we jump across boundaries that otherwise we would normally set, but for some reason we feel like we have to have it. You want a cure for Christmas financial anxiety? There's 2 words: boundaries and budget. Boundaries and budget. You want another cure? Give away. Give it away. Take some of that time that you've now budgeted and you have margin for and go to a soup kitchen. Take your kids shopping. Go pull a name off a tree. And rather than talking about what do you want, what do you want, what do you want, you can explain to them, hey, these people have nothing. When I look at kids in Belize, I was watching those pictures, and those are from a couple of years when I went. We went and bought a trampoline for Black Friday at Academy. And they had a buy one, get one free gun sale. And I'm going to tell you something. That was the valley of the shadow of death. That line was backed up for a mile. But I wanted to get this trampoline So I drove up there at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I got this trampoline, and it's still sitting in my garage, not put together. And I look at this picture, and I remember one of those pictures. There's a little kid sitting on a mattress, and he looks really sad. The reality is he was exhausted, because what he did is he took an old mattress, and he folded it over, and he was doing flips on it. And I go, man, we got it good. And I look, and those 3 kids around that faucet, that was the only faucet that had semi-clean water. We wouldn't call it clean. I drank some of it. And I was in the hospital shortly after. But that was the only, in their whole neighborhood, they all got together around the water faucet. But we need, and we have to have the cure for Christmas anxiety. Go give it away. Go take your family and serve others. Generosity cures greed. And I think we live in a culture, and I'm glad we're blessed, but we live in a culture that says, I need it now. And we invite anxiety into our home. The third and final thing is make room for Jesus. I know this is what preachers should say, right? I say this every year. I say we need to put the Christ back in Christmas. That was real popular for a couple of years, because Starbucks came out with a cup that had a tree on it or something. And so we got to put Christ back in Christmas. And we get all these cliches, and we get all of these sayings. And the reality is within our own homes, we don't even sit down and read the story of Christmas. You see, Martha, with all of the bashing that she had, she actually did something amazing that we can learn from. And it's found in verse 38. They came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She opened her home. She opened her home for Jesus. I often wonder, with the busyness of the season and the traditions and the rushing around, if Jesus actually walked into our door, would we even notice? Would we even have time for him? How much time do you give Jesus? I know for me, I did my own evaluation, and I'm going to tell you, I was a little bit upset at myself. I work for him. Don't get me wrong. I'm in the Bible every day because I work for him. But how much time do I actually give Jesus? But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. That's the statement I want you to take home this Christmas holiday season. There's only one thing worth being concerned about, with all of the shopping and all of the travel and all of the family. And I get it. We're very, very busy people. You see, Pastor, you don't understand. I have to work. I do have bills, and there's going to come a day that I'm going to get that under control, but I have to work. And during the holiday season, man, that is my time. Who gives you the ability to work? Who gives us the ability to work? Well, you don't understand, Pastor. My time is really, really busy because we have basketball tournaments and we have baseball tournaments and we have sports. Let me ask you a question. Who gives you or your child the athleticism that they have? Well, you don't understand, Pastor. We have a lot of parties. I've got my party, and then I got my wife's party, and then I've got my kids' party, and then we've got the school parties, and we've got the school programs, and I just don't have a lot of time. Who gives us a nation to live in that we can celebrate Christmas in our schools, that we can celebrate Christmas within our workplaces? Well, you don't understand, Pastor. I have family coming. Like, I can't be at church because I got family flying in, and I've got to get the house ready, and we're going to have our Christmas. Who blesses us with our family? Who gives us our family? Well, I have lights to hang. I have bounce houses to blow up. I have things. I have busy stuff. Like, I've got to get ready for Jesus time, right? Well, who gives us the ability to get ready for the Jesus time? I have a list. Who gives us breath? I have stuff. Who gave us our stuff? There is only one thing worth being concerned about, straight out of the mouth of our Savior. See, Jesus said, don't worry about the ball games. Don't worry about the parties. Don't worry about the malls. Don't worry about the shopping. Don't worry about the trees. Don't worry about the candles. Don't worry about any of it. He said, put your focus on me. Seek me first. Put your focus on me. And I often wonder, are we more concerned about the events? Are we more concerned about the traditions? Are we more concerned about the stuff? And don't get me wrong, it's all good stuff. But are we more concerned about the stuff Or are we more concerned about the Savior? We talked about a story. Oh, it's a phenomenal story. See, there was this young man who came from the inner city of Houston. And he had really big legs and a rocket arm. And he came to a university, and it was called the University of Alabama, one of the most prestigious university football programs there was. And he went 26-2. And he won a ring. And he was a local hero. And then he got benched because there was another kid who had a stronger arm or faster feet and won just as many, and he was the new hometown hero. And then that kid got hurt, and this other kid who had been benched but had stayed when everybody else leaves, he stayed. He did it right. He had character, right? Oh, man, it's a great story. How many of y'all talked about that this morning? I talked about it 7 times. I counted. 7. And it's a great story. I talked about a kid named Jalen. And you know how many times I talked about a kid named Jesus this week? The only thing that matters the most, the only thing worth worrying about is Jesus. I'm a big proponent of the first 15. Here's my challenge to you over the next 3 weeks, from now till Christmas. Give God 15 minutes a day. 5 minutes getting His Word, 5 minutes. Instead of country or talk show or ESPN radio, put on some worship music. Whatever worship music you like. There's Revocation Radio that has rock and rap, and there's Christmas Radio that's got all Christmas songs. There's K-Love that's got all boy bands. Whatever you like. Whatever you like. Give God 5 minutes of it. And then go to Him in prayer. God, remove this anxiety. God, remove this grief. God, I'm having a hard time this year. And I need you. Give God the first 15. Some ways you can do that, write in a journal. If you've got grief, write a letter. Write a letter to God. If you've got pain, write a letter to God. Journal. Journaling's big. Journaling's huge. Because you can be honest journaling, right? You don't have to put on a mask. We walk into church and we're like, woo! Man, everything's good, blessed, highly favored, when inside it's killing us. Journal. Write letters to God. Tell God how you really feel. He's got big shoulders. Change the noise. Change the noise. Put on some worship music. Put on some Jesus music. Change the noise. And I'm going to encourage you, change up your system. Change up your system. Find the things that you're busy with that don't really matter and get rid of them. Change your traditions. Mix it up. And I know for some of you that's, whoo. But here's the deal. Sometimes when you change the routine, you can relight your passion. Change your routine and put Jesus as the center. It's okay to say no over the holidays. Watch this. Everybody say it with me. No. See, you can do it. You can do it. You can say no to overspending. You can say no to overscheduling. You can say no to some busy things that may be okay things, but you miss out on the best thing. You want to know why I do Coffee House? Because for 51 weeks out of the year, it's about us and it's about our comfort. And we come in and we do songs and we take up an offering and we do some announcements and I stand up here and talk and we come pray at the altar and then we go and we've given God our hour. But for 1 week out of the year, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go tell somebody else the story about Jesus with the same passion you tell the story about Jalen. Because here's what I know. Jesus is going to give you eternity. Jalen's going to give you one more game. What are we passionate about during this holiday season? There's only one thing that matters. His name is Jesus. The rest may be good things, but we miss out on the best thing. My goal this month is to reach the whosoevers. And can I tell you something? There was a day, if you're a Christ follower, you were a whosoever. And we have thousands of whosoevers out there that need to hear the story of Jesus. Because Jesus is the one thing that truly matters. Bow your head with me this morning. God, I just want to say I'm sorry. God, this morning as we've come into this place. God, I apologize. I've got a schedule. I've got shopping. I got family. I got stuff. And oftentimes that stuff takes away from you. God, I pray this holiday season, God, I pray this Christmas season, that we actually put Christ back in it. And not just the leftover. But God, I know that there's people sitting in here this morning. Their hearts are breaking. God, I know there's people sitting in here this morning. And they may not want to see another Christmas. God, I pray that you show yourself huge. God, I pray that for somebody in here that doesn't have the joy, that doesn't have the peace, that doesn't have the hope, that God, that they look at you. Because you are the reason for the season. God, you are love. You loved us so much that you sent your Son. That all of us, that all of the messy people in this room, if we believe in you, we can spend eternity with you. And oh, how much of a better story is that than one of a football game? God, we give you this season as a church. We give you this season. God, I pray if there's somebody in this room this morning that doesn't know you, that God, they accept you this morning right where they're at. They don't need me. They don't need a priest. They need you. That God, that they just open their hand right where they're at and they say, God, I choose you. Jesus, this is the season that I choose you. Come into my life. God, I pray if there's somebody in this room who's been far from you, that God, that they realize that it's okay to come home. That this is the season that you're standing there with your arms open wide. That God, that they begin to focus on you, the most important thing in their life. And God, I pray again for those who are dealing with grief and pain and struggle and hurt and addictions. And this time of year brings on all of those negative emotions. That God, I pray this morning that God, your altar is open, your steps are open, that God, that they'll find freedom. That they'll find freedom that can only be found through you. We give you Christmas. We give it back to you. In Jesus' name, amen.